if Israel had not stepped in, these people, these Syrians, would completely decimate them ISIS style. And Israel jumping in and saving them from genocide is now condemned by the head of the UN.
The people that have been yelling, crying, genocide, Israel's doing genocide, Israel's doing a genocide, all of a sudden an actual genocide is happening.
You're on the front lines for the Jewish people. A Jewish fist is attached to a Jewish mind.
Welcome to the Israel Guys, where we believe in a world of anti-Israel propaganda and Jew hatred. You should always be connected to the land and people of Israel. Good to be with you guys this week, all the way from the Mount of Blessing deep in the heart of Samaria. And we have Rabbis R.A. Bramwitz, Jeremy Gimpel, driven all the way 2 hours from deep in the heart of Judea. Also with Joshua Waller. I didn't mean to just leave you as like a add on there at the end, because he is the executive director of this whole show. So good to have everyone with us. Obviously, so much going on in the news, big topics. Jeremy, you said that we should call this show Israel is actually saving the Druze in Syria. So we'll get to that, guys. Hang on to your seats. So much other things. I mean, you got settler violence again, settler violence in the news, attacking a Christian Arab village here in Samaria, or what you might have heard in the news as the West Bank. Should go without saying it's completely fake, but we'll tell you why about that here in a minute. Hamas has supposedly agreed to a new withdrawal map presented by Israel in Qatar with the United States that will lead to a ceasefire. Sounds like a bunch of baloney to me. And last but not least, Netanyahu has lost his majority coalition, sort of, but not really, which means that normally when that happens, like the Knesset, Israel's government could fall apart. Doesn't really look like it so much right now. Guys, make sure to subscribe wherever you're watching or listening from. You don't want to miss out on this podcast or next week's. Every single Thursday, our podcast comes to you live from the Mount of Blessing in Samaria. You don't want to miss out. So, Jeremy, do you want to start us off with what in the world is going on in Syria?
Well, I think it's just really important first to recognize who the Druze are. Meaning it would be beautiful to sort of see everything that's happening in the land of Israel in this region through the eyes of the Tanakh, the eyes of the Hebrew Bible. Meaning the Arab world sees themselves as descendants of Ishmael, the son of Abraham. We see ourselves as the sons of Jacob, sons of Israel. The Druze identify themselves as the descendants of Jethro, the Yitro, the father-in-law of Moses. And now he's a unique character because he obviously aligned himself with Israel. He sided with the people of Israel. His daughter married Moses, and they identify him as their spiritual father, as their religious father, as their patriarch. And so there is a certain alignment with the Druze and the people of Israel that really doesn't exist with any other nation around us. What's even more unique, inside Israel, they are the archetype of what would be a ger toshav, a resident. They serve in the army. They're in the universities. They're working alongside Israel. They support Israel. They are literally our brothers from another mother. They're just like among us. They are like our spiritual family, civilians, citizens. And all of a sudden now, because they have family that's being massacred in Syria, Israel took responsibility for their family in another country. And that's the first time that that's ever happened in my lifetime, that Israel proactively went to another country to defend a minority somewhere else because of a sense of justice or injustice that's happened. And I think that that's a historic turning point for Israel.
Just to clarify for people who don't know who, too, you have Golan Heights, about 150, 180,000 Druze that live on the Israeli side of the Golan Heights. And then you have hundreds of thousands of Druze that live on the Syrian side. But these are all, basically you could call them a family. Like Druze are part of the Arab culture that very much they live as tribes and clans, right? So you have literally families on both sides of the border, some Israeli citizens, some Syrian citizens. And for years, a lot of them have been separate. But now, when the Druze on the Syrian side are being attacked by this new coalition government, which is supposed to be this peaceful government that's going to join the Abraham Accords. We'll have more on that, why that's not true in a second. But now, you have videos this week of Israeli Druze breaking down the border fence, 1,000 Israeli Druze going into Syria to fight for their brothers and sisters yesterday.
You want to talk about a minority. You really want to talk about the Druze that are in the Middle East, because they're not Muslim. They don't hold by Islam. They have a separate religion. That's why they're persecuted. There's only 1.2 million Druze in the Middle East. 700,000 of them live in Syria.
Wow.
300,000 live in Lebanon, and about 200,000 or so live in Israel. But because all three of them are really in the same region, they're all interconnected. They're like one giant tribe. And as a minority of a different religion or different persuasion, what happens when these jihadists get guns, immediately they start attacking the minority.
Yeah, this is part of the process of Israel waking up. You know, I've been saying October 7th, I think we'll look back at it, to the final defibrillation that brought Israel back to life and woke us up to our identity and who we are. And so what's happening now is we're coming to, and we're like, before we go and fix the world, make your bed. You know, work on our house. Look at that map right there. This is part of the land of Israel. The biblical land of Israel, and the Druze aren't just a minority that is being threatened with genocide. It's already happening to them. They're experiencing their own October 7th. We're seeing it. They're going into the leaders, these 80-year-old, great, revered leader of the Druze. They shaved off his mustache. They taunted him. They humiliated him, and they executed him in front of everyone. Right? This is our opportunity to say, no, we're not just here to take care of ourselves. We're here to take responsibility. That is the primary underlying theme of waking up to who we are, to take responsibility, not only for ourselves, not only for the state of Israel, the greater state of Israel, but all of humanity. And the Druze are such an obvious address for us to start with because they serve in the army. They're loyal to the state of Israel, right? Let's go back to what Jeremy was saying about Jethro. Jethro is their spiritual father and their ancestor. They see it. We see it. We're all on the same page. And Jethro was loyal to the state of Israel. He was a sort of a mediator between Israel and the nations. Everything that the Druze are is what he was. And now we can come and say, last week we spoke about the Jabari clan. These Arabs in Hebron that said, we want to be part of the Abraham Accords. We will not tolerate any terrorism coming from our midst. We'll take care of it. You don't need to, Israel. And then the next week they had to retract. Why? Because the Palestinian Authority came and was terrorizing them until they retracted. We should have said immediately, we've got but the minute you say that, we will secure you. You're our allies. Let our allies know that we will defend them. That's what the message we need to send to the Druze right now.
People will look back at this strike against the jihadists in Syria and realize that this was a turning point in Israel's history. It's Israel actually rising up to be a regional power. Up until now, Israel has only been reactive. If Israel is attacked, then they'll respond with some sort of defensive blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden, they're seeing an injustice outside its own political borders. It's now like taking its place as the leader of this region. And this is the first time that we can really point our finger and say Israel is actually going to be the future leader of this region.
You know, what I find fascinating is what the UN says about this, because obviously the UN has to throw its 2 cents into when something good is happening to downplay it as best they can. And this was a tweet or something by the head of the UN, Antonio Guterres. Gutierrez.
He's the head.
Yeah. He says he just bashes the whole thing. He's alarmed by the continued escalation and the violence in Syria. He condemns it. He says Israel is just escalating things with airstrikes and reports of the IDF's deployment of forces in the Golan. It's like, okay, have you not realized that that's part of Israel yet? No, he has not realized that that's part of Israel yet. And he's still claiming that Israel is just holding territory from Syria there. And then he says this, he says, I call for an immediate cessation of all violations of Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity. That's his response.
Sovereignty is not a very good word to use when Syria was just overturned again by a terrorist faction like in the last year.
This is what's fascinating, though, is because Israel just saved the Druze from literally a genocide. The UN is there to keep genocides from happening on the planet.
In theory.
In theory. Israel stepped in and saved the Druze villages of Syria from a complete genocide, right? They're not the majority people. They're not strong enough to not just be a complete victim of utter decimation there. If Israel had not stepped in, these people, these Syrians, would completely decimate them ISIS style. And Israel jumping in and saving them from genocide is now condemned by the head of the UN.
The people that have been yelling, crying, genocide, Israel's doing genocide, Israel's doing a genocide, all of a sudden an actual genocide is happening. And a hospital was raided.
Yeah.
Everyone was killed inside the hospital.
The hospital.
But
And everybody raise your hand and say, hospital, 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 like they do in Gaza. No, that's a real hospital, not a launching pad for attacks.
Let's keep in mind that we are here to see a little bit pierce the veil of the seeming disconnection and multiplicity of this world and see the hand of God in it. And when you do that, you understand that everything that's happening is a stick in his hand. So we could either bite the stick or say, what message are you sending to us? Ask God to give us the wisdom to understand. And a big part of the, there's a saying in Ethics of Our Fathers, Eifo she'ein ish, tishtadel liot ish. Where there is no man, be a man. Step up where nobody is stepping up. And just like you said, the United Nations is meant to prevent genocide. If their policies are implemented, there will be more genocides than ever before. The real United Nations is supposed to be in the land of Israel. It's supposed to be in Jerusalem on Mount Moriah, where all the nations come to offer sacrifices to the God of all mankind. And this is all, in my mind, it's all leading us to, the message to us is, rise like lions, build the temple that the nations will be thanking us for, and they will eventually say, what has taken you so long? All that we've done is bringing you to this. Let us come and worship the God of Israel. And it's all leading us really to building, and nobody wants to say it because it makes you seem like an extremist, crazy-eyed, wild-eyed. And you know what? I guess for me, that bridge has been crossed.
I mean, the BBC kind of branded.
Can I make
you
a correlation really quickly here, though? Because this is just fascinating to me. There's two big things that we're talking about on the show, and we'll continue to talk about Syria a little bit here as well. But in light of the UN's aggression towards Israel in this life-saving effort to save the small people group of the Druze in Syria, they call that, they're not even mentioning that. They're just saying Israel's aggressions in Syria. Meanwhile, as they're trying to bluff off this, what is a legitimate genocide that Israel just halted, they're calling something that's not a genocide at all. They're calling these settlers of Judea and Samaria genocidal. Okay? An unbelievable correlation of these two incidents that we're really covering on today's show are the legit genocide attempts going on in Syria and the absolutely not at all. It's a branded delegitimization campaign by the UN to make settlers look like genocidal terrorists. And they have these incidents that have happened this week with a fire that was started. And this is a little bit of breaking news for everybody. Vatican News was published. Boom. Settlers terrorize these Christians in Taybeh. I've been to Taybeh. The Taybeh Christians, number one, they have a beer factory there. They hate Jews. They're very anti-Semitic in Taybeh. But let's not talk about that. What we want to talk about right now is the facts of the story. Who lit the fire? Who burned down their own Christian things? There was a cemetery that was burned. And so they're saying the settlers came and burned our cemetery. What's the actual facts? The settlers didn't burn a cemetery. The Arabs lit a fire to burn down the local Jewish farmers' fields because that was their grazing lands, and that the best way to attack a shepherd is to take away all of his resource of shepherding lands. That were his shepherding lands, not like he was stealing anything. When the Jewish people came out to put the fire out, the Arabs videoed them, these Christian Arabs in Taybeh videoed them and said, these guys are burning down our fields. What a ridiculous turn of events. And then in the other,
let me just read a little bit of what actually happened. And there's very good evidence of this already, and hopefully more will come out. But it looks like the fire was deliberately set by Arabs in an attempt to damage grazing land belonging to a nearby Jewish farm. Here's what's key. The farm owner and his team, a Jewish farm owner, the settlers in this story, worked to extinguish the blaze and filed 3 police reports about the arson. Then the fire spread unintentionally because they couldn't get it put out in time to a Christian cemetery from Taybeh. And now everybody is blaming the farmer for it happening, right? Remember, they tried to put out the blaze. There's even videos of the Jewish farmers and his friends putting out the blaze, and he filed 3 different complaints with the police. So, complete misrepresentation.
Go ahead.
You go ahead.
No, just that the UN, that the Vatican News is going to make a big deal about a little fire that was started in a field in the Benjamin Regional Council in Judea and Samaria, while there's legitimate genocidal acts being committed against a small people group in Syria. They're going to downplay that, call Israel the bad guy for saving these people, legitimately saving them, while meanwhile trying to make a Jewish farmer in Judea and Samaria that didn't even light the fire. They're going to expose. That's the first thing on their big thing.
Right,
that's
but
what they're talking
why is
about.
that? Why is the Vatican covering this, whereas they're not covering all that other stuff? Because that other stuff doesn't really have much to do with the Vatican. Attacking these settlers has everything to do with the Vatican. Because what is the Vatican saying? They're the new nation of Israel. And the more Israel is weakened, the more it's proof in their mind, in the eyes of the world, that they're the new Israel and God has rejected the Jewish people. That's why it was so weakened when all of the prophecies of the ingathering of the exiles and the revival of the Hebrew language are happening to the Jewish people in here today. So the more we're weakened. So why is it that the Vatican is covering it, and that is a lot of the left-wing news in Israel, the top stories are all about the Hilltop Youth? Why? Because all of a sudden we're starting to hear about the Abraham Accords, but this time it's contingent on the two-state solution. But if they want to implement the two-state solution, they need to get the country behind it. So what do? The sacred cow of the nation of Israel is the IDF. Look at since October 7th, since the foundation of the state, this nation loves the army. And so if you want to make it where you can give away huge swaths of land, well, then you say, who represents the settlements that the two-state solution would be given away? The settlers, but they're not extreme enough, the Hilltop Youth. Let's vilify them and make it where they're attacking the IDF to get public sentiment against them, so then we can implement the two-state solution. And so that's what this is all about. It's all about weakening Israel so much by making the two-state solution, giving our heartland to jihadists that want to murder us on October 7th, all of us. And how do they do that? By attacking the Hilltop Youth.
And there was another incident which was reported on our channel earlier, or from last Friday, right before Shabbat started. It was, I'm sure you saw it in the mainstream media, as another violent clash that was started by settler violence. What actually happened was it was Arab terrorists who started an incident of throwing rocks and attacking Israelis, and then they responded in self-defense. Jewish teenager was seriously injured. A Jewish shepherd was killed not long before that in a different incident. And the Israeli security officials confirmed the event was a premeditated, organized attack with the clear aim of drawing in Israeli security forces and provoking a wider conflict. And all you guys heard in the mainstream media was violent settlers, violent settlers, violent settlers.
Well, and to note that in this attack, the IDF was involved. They were the ones that were there on the site. There was some self-defense that happened.
But in the mainstream media, though, IDF soldiers are violent settlers. It doesn't matter, like who it is. Like anybody they can brand as a violent settler. And it doesn't matter if they live in Tel Aviv, and Jaffa, Ashdod. Like
one last note is that the so-called American jihadist, by the way, that was killed in that attack was
the American citizen.
Was a Hamas member. Okay.
Yeah. So, as far as we know,
that's at least that's what's come out now. So I just that all big, and I know Jeremy got something to say on this.
I don't want to move on from the Hilltop Youth yet.
Yeah, okay, go for it.
Okay, if that's what you're going to do, I just want to say that one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this is because I've met hundreds, if not thousands of them. Just the other day, I went to one of the farms that they're establishing. And one of the themes that I've seen is that almost all of them, you go to these farms, there's not one smartphone. Yeah. And it's not that you can buy a smartphone for less than you could buy this dumb flip phones that they all have. They're ideologically against these smartphones because they see what it does to the mind. So they have these flip phones and they don't have one weapon. They're surrounded by jihadists who are seething. They don't have one weapon. One weapon. These kids are just, they're so brave. Am I going to say that there's not kids that are out of line, that act in ways that they shouldn't act, that are violent? And no, they are. But just like every kid is, okay? You're 14, you're 15, and you're surrounded. So clearly they're not going to have the perfect balance. But to vilify them as a movement, because there's kids, like look at any movement of kids. When I was 14 years old, you know what I was doing? And they're putting their lives on the line for Israel. The tip of the spear. It seems so unjust, and there's such a sinister plot here to vilify them in this way. Whereas we could be able to say, listen, this is who they are. This is who you are. That's what I try to do when I go there. I empower them to show them, yes, you are the tip of the spear. You're on the front lines for the Jewish people. But this is what Jews don't do. A Jewish fist is attached to a Jewish mind, a great rabbi once said. We don't just have act of violence because this is what they are. We have to be thought out. We defend ourselves, but that most of them are already there. Most of them I learned from. But anyways, go ahead.
Well, see, they're vilifying the good, and then the evil, the genocide, is being totally ignored. And that's what I believe all of this is all about. It's to recognize that there is good in the world and to recognize that there's evil in the world. And the world now is totally confused about this. America's ambassador to Turkey said like this: we unequivocally condemn violence against civilians in Sweida, in Syria. Full stop. All parties must step back and engage in meaningful dialogue that leads to a lasting ceasefire. Meaningful dialogue with these genocidal jihadists. I mean,
with ISIS patches.
Yeah, I just saw a video exactly with these. Do you want to show it?
Yeah, we'll show this video. I mean, and you keep talking,
they're not
but
hiding it. They are wearing ISIS patches on them. Now, if there is like one symbol today, like what last generation was a swastika, is there anyone that could not say that ISIS is absolute evil? And here they are identifying with ISIS, acting on behalf of that ideology, where there is clearly a side of good and there's a side of evil. And where is that clash happening? It's happening here in the land of Israel. This is the battleground of good and evil. And until we recognize that that's what this is all about, moral clarity to say right and wrong, and realize that that's what Eretz Israel is for. That's what this land of Israel is for. And right now, Syria, what's happening, it's interesting because there's genocides that are happening in Africa. There's genocides that are happening where Muslims are oppressing Christians in a lot of different places, India and Pakistan. But this one right here in like just north of the Golan, that's actually a part of biblical Israel. And it's not a coincidence that Israel is taking responsibility and saying that's happening sort of either subconsciously or consciously, saying that's really our responsibility. So slowly but surely, the idea of good and evil has to be clarified. And also the fact that that is our responsibility. Anything that's within biblical Israel is Israel's responsibility. Like, you want to talk about land for peace? I have a land for peace plan. Give us the land and we'll bring peace. We'll bring law and order, peace and prosperity. Because right now, Syria is in total shambles. There's no leadership there. There's no army there. There's just jihadists that are like taking control.
So why then does the Trump administration right now think that they're eligible to be a peace partner of the Abraham Accords when Syria is obviously in a mess?
The Trump administration, I mean, hasn't Israel also indicated that they want to enter into the Abraham Accords with Syria?
Has Israel?
Yeah, isn't that what Netanyahu has been talking about?
It's hard to be more Catholic than the Pope. You know, like when Israel says certain things, it's like, what do we expect for the nations to constantly, for the Trump administration to say, well, Israel is not in your best interest. We have to express our own best interest.
Right. As soon as there was a thought, what, we could make peace with Syria, Israel will sell its grandmother to just on the hopes that we could make peace. Even though he's an Al-Qaeda warrior that hasn't changed, he's been nursed on the milk of jihad since he was a little kid. And you see the soldiers under him are wearing ISIS patches, committing a genocidal attack against.
And we're going to have them as the Abraham Accords?
It's delusional.
Yeah, I want to go back to something you were saying earlier. And by the way, Marco Rubio, I think at like 5 a.m. this morning, so this is very like recent news, he put out a statement, said, we have engaged all the parties involved in the clashes in Syria. We have agreed on specific steps that will bring this troubling and horrifying situation to an end tonight. So by the time you guys are watching us, if Trump gets his way, which he doesn't always, even though he might think otherwise, he said, this will require all parties to deliver on the commitments they have made, and this is what we fully expect them to do. It's kind of like the ambassador to Turkey. You're kind of like, why is everything all about like all parties involved, like Israel is at fault here? But I want to go back to something you were saying earlier. And I think it's really interesting that the Druze are claimed to be the descendants of Jethro, because you're talking about the Druze being like the foreigners living in the land, the Ger Toshav. But in some sense, Jethro is Moses' family, so you could almost say Druze are part of Israel's family. Obviously, you got hundreds of thousands that are Israelis, and they're some of the most elite soldiers in the IDF. They're like the trackers. They're very like amazing soldiers in the IDF, very Zionistic. We know that. And so, but you have hundreds of thousands living in Lebanon and Syria. So by Israel going in, not only is it biblical Israel, but they're also going to rescue their family members, you could say, in a sense, because you have the 150, 200,000 Druze living in Israel that are desperate to go save their family members. And by Israel going in and helping them,
Right,
they're essentially saving their family.
After advising Moses, Jethro left and went back to his own land and his own thing, but a lot of his descendants became the Kenites, who lived within the borders of Israel. But they still had these direct tribal and familial connections to their brethren, other descendants of Jethro. And because of that, if the Kenites are within our land and they're loyal and they're serving in the military and they're part of the land.
Yael came from? The
Yael HaKeni, I believe that's true. I believe that's true.
Through his, what's his name's head?
JL.
Yes, through the Sisera.
Yeah.
Yes, but you're getting
sorry, I didn't mean to.
The point is that the parallels between what's happening now and the biblical Jethro and everything that happened biblically, the parallels are so clear, all the way to the bigger picture, zooming out and seeing Iran and what happened. There was Saul, and he was about to cut off the head of Agag, and he didn't do it because of because of pressures and his own internal voice of what he was supposed to be doing. Whatever it was, he didn't fulfill the will of God and cut off Agag's head. And now it's happened again. And this is our opportunity to rectify that blemish in Jewish history and finally go on the final route to redemption that we're destined to go on.
Well, it seems like Israel is being forced in some ways to go a little bit biblical. And what does that mean? Our first battle in the land of Israel was against the kingdom of Jericho. The kingdom of Jericho. But what was Jericho? It was just a city. It was a walled city, but it was its own kingdom. And so if we look at what's happening in the Middle East, there is a region in Syria that is entirely populated, or almost entirely populated by Druze. That should be an independent kingdom. Let them guard themselves. Let them protect themselves. There's Kurds. They live in Syria. They don't have a homeland. There's an opportunity now. The Jabari clan in Hebron, let them have their own area that they're responsible for. Meaning it's like slowly but surely, instead of having these Western nations that were drawn on a map sometime by Britain somewhere, it's like actually letting the natural flow of the Middle East take shape, where each people has its own territory. And who is the sort of the sheriff of the region? It would be Israel. They're the ones that would be peace and prosperity and law and order to the region. We're giving each minority its own sort of independence and security.
Is that your peace plan?
I just thought of it right now. As I was there, I was like, I actually think that is a way forward, that it doesn't need to be Syria that's run by a regime that's backed by Iran. No, it's like there are tribes, there are peoples that live in this land. Let them live in this land, and Israel should take responsibility for that region on a security level and offer these people peace and prosperity and law and order, and let them live as their own people in their place.
So one question I have as it relates to the Druze specifically is that overall Israelis love Druze. And I don't think there's hardly anybody that would even...
We've all had Druze in our units.
Yeah. And it's like they're
in the army,
assimilated part of this country. People love them. It's mutual, but they are very, very secluded and very, very much so like a tribe. They are a tribe, and they marry within that tribe for the most part, right? I've never heard of hardly any situations where they don't. Like it's a very tight tribe. Here's my question: and I don't know if this is good or bad, but because of that tribal thing, you saw the Druze just in like serious Druze style, I would say Middle Eastern style rage about what was going on in Syria. They weren't taking orders from the IDF, I don't think. Maybe they were. Maybe there was an undercover thing saying, hey, this is awesome. But from the top, it wasn't like, hey, we're going to send 1,000 Druze fighters.
No, the IDF was telling them, don't do that.
Exactly.
We'll do that.
Yeah, but they didn't listen to those orders.
Because they didn't believe it.
Yeah.
They didn't believe that the IDF would actually do what they needed to do. I remember there was a time that one of the local Palestinian Authority policemen, which is just a comical term for terrorists, right? This murder in Gush Etzion last week.
Happened,
that we can talk. Right? Two policemen committed this terrorist attack murder. They're policemen. It's a joke. But I don't remember the details because it was years ago. But they somehow took the bodies of two Druze that were killed. And the Druze went in as a little militia and they said, you have 2 hours to give it back. And you know what they did? They gave them back.
Yeah, you better believe
because the Druze understand the language of this region.
Right. Everyone that lives around us, there's what to learn from them. Their unity and their self-sacrifice. They literally broke through the border of Israel and marched into Syria to defend their tribe. I was inspired by that.
Let's make a correlation here. They did it. and the global media is fine. Let's make the exact same situation. There's a massacre of Jews still going on for 2 years, happening in Gaza, and the Jews are still being held. And there are forces within Israel, the settlers, that are from time to time breaching the fence of Gaza and going in, not with an attempt to even, just because they want to say, hey, this is the land of Israel. And the whole world condemns it. Identical situation, literally. I mean, I can't think of anything different. But yet for the Druze, there's openness to the idea. For the Jews, zero. Jews should never be allowed to. We're going to get a ceasefire over there and we're going to stop Jews. This needs to be an Arab, and they're trying to make peace agreements with Qatar and Saudi Arabia to rebuild it. And are those discussions happening in Syria? Nope, not happening.
If I hear the word ceasefire one more time.
No, I'm with you.
I am just so tired of that word, that Hamas are making demands that Israel can only do 1.2 kilometers outside. Who is the Hamas to be making demands?
No, we said 2. They said 1. We agreed on 1.2.
It's just absurd.
Yeah.
It's absurd.
And not only is it absurd, but it's embarrassing. I look at my children, and my daughter's just coming to enough to ask questions, the questions that embarrass me. Like, why do we have to run into a bomb shelter? It's an embarrassing question for me. That I am part of a defense force, the Israeli army, that is allowing missiles to be shot at my children. We need to have righteous indignation. What you just said, Jeremy, is totally true. We need to learn from looking at our enemies. And why is it that not only the Druze can we learn from, but Jolani himself? What is Jolani doing? He went down to the Druze, and the first thing he did to this 80-year-old pious Druze leader was humiliate him until he was in tears, and then he executed. Why? Because they believe that humiliation is part of the defeat. So what we need to understand about Jolani is we need to humiliate him. Well, he is just another branch of Hamas. We need to go in and not only defeat Hamas, but take their leaders out, broadcast their public humiliation and execution for all of them, and say, this is going to happen. You send us back every single one of our hostages now, or this happens to all of you. And we're declaring sovereignty over Gaza. And what would the world say? What could they say more than what they're saying already? They're already saying we're committing genocide. Where they're going to say, now you're really committing genocide? What does that mean, really? What, we weren't doing it before when you said we were? Okay, so I'm not saying we should be reactive to the world, but we need to understand that we send a message that you rape the daughter of Israel. You so much as stub the toe of one of the daughters of Israel, and you will face the wrath of the nation of Israel like you've never imagined before. And that's it. And that's the message we need to be broadcasting. And that's the message we will be broadcasting.
One of the reasons why I admire the Druze so much is that they just stormed into Syria. I didn't see them carrying weapons. I didn't see them with an army behind them.
There was some reports that was a big issue because they were taking IDF, the issued weapons from their military units.
From their own units.
And running in.
So that was a minority of them.
Yeah,
but
of course.
Some of them had guns. But imagine if that would have been Israel's response. You've taken hostages and 1 million Israelis. Not the IDF. Mm-hmm. Just the Israelis went in and demanded justice.
That's acting like a tribe.
That's acting like a people. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's like, we need that. It's like, oh, well, there's bombs that are falling in Sderot. That's not really affecting my lunch in Tel Aviv. Oh, there's things that are happening. It's like they felt connected. They felt unified. And there's so much that we can learn from just watching what's unfolding before us.
Yeah, one of them being is that ultimately we are a tribe. We are the tribes. We're the 12 tribes of Israel. We're not a religion. We're not Jewish. We're the 12 tribes of Israel. Like, to get into understanding that tribal mentality, we shouldn't need to have 1 million Israelis running into Gaza. We should have the Israeli army do it. But if they're not, then maybe the nation needs to wake up.
It's even more than a tribe. Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, we are in truth one large extended family. And if we treated each other as family, like someone has now taken my brother, that's the way the Druze felt. They felt like my brothers and sisters are being attacked. There's just no way. I'm going over there and I'm going to protect them with my body. And if Israel now could just incorporate that, bring it from our heads to our hearts, that all of us are actually family. We're not a religion. We are family. I think that would change everything.
I think the merger between where the country is at now, which is the nation itself is in a relatively advanced process, I believe, of waking up. There's still a lot more to do to that understanding of family. The bridge is that tribal understanding, because what are tribes, right? There's the father and then the 12 sons of Israel, and then each one of them is a tribe. But to get to that consciousness that you're 100% right about, that we're a family, literally brothers and sisters, which means that it doesn't matter if your brother or your sister is totally off base, lost in a world of illusions and crime or drugs. It's your brother and your sister. Your love for them transcends rational, intellectual faculties, and that's what we need to really understand. Exactly what you're saying.
I think it happens in mass too, because like we see what happens with the Druze. It was the response of the entire people at one time. That came from the
instinctive.
Top. It wasn't an individual that felt, oh, I should go help those people. That's what's happening in Israel with what's going on in Gaza. They felt something individually, like. And those people that, get arrested for crossing over the border, we hear about it from time to time, whether that's in Lebanon or that's down in Gaza, Israelis one at a time are trying to take the law into their own hands kind of thing. Now, what happened with the Druze is they all, and from the top, so this is the directive, we're going in. That was actually the head of the Druze village actually put that out, or of all the Druze. They have, I guess, some sort of hierarchy within their culture. And that directive came from him. And then boom, they hit the border and ran in. So I think, like you said, there is something to that. At the same time, in a democracy, it should all be treated the same. Every Druze person that ran over the border should be treated the same as an Israeli that runs over the border. But that's obviously not going to happen here, I don't think. And so that's the discrepancy that I see here, is a little bit of different treatment of a natural citizen of Israel just because of their tribe.
Well, I feel like everyone in their hearts, when they saw the Druze did that, they were proud of them. They were jealous of them, and they really appreciated it.
But Israelis certainly aren't proud of seeing the news clip of some Israeli jumping the border.
Right. Well, if there was mess.
Exactly the point.
I think you're right, yeah.
Exactly the point. It has to come from leadership going in. And on that note, there is some mass leadership decisions, Jeremy, that you were just telling me that have gone in the right direction. And I think there is a unity that's happening in Israel. Maybe not on the unified level of the Druze, but it's getting there. And you mentioned some things in Hebron.
Just real quick, just to wrap up the Druze thing in Syria. And the IDF is acting to help the Druze in Syria. Yeah. There's tons of videos. My favorite videos are the ones where Israel drops bombs right in the background of the news reports, especially the lady that's talking about Defense Minister Israel Katz. And I didn't get the Arabic translated in time. And like, as she's basically threatening Israel's defense minister, like a bomb and doesn't hurt her. It just scares her half to death. But Israel hitting like the Syrian forces arms and their military trucks and taking out their weapons depots and stuff like that. So IDF Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir conducted a high-level visit to Israel's northern border, and he said, quote, "We're acting decisively to block threats beyond the border, safeguard Israeli citizens, and ensure the safety of the Druze community." So it kind of remains to be seen to what extent is the IDF willing to go to protect the Druze community in Syria, but they're definitely not just sitting idly by.
Well, and just one more note on that is that the Druze did push back and say that we're kind of like mandating. They're such a huge part of the society. How many Druze are there in Israel?
150 to 200,000. Yeah.
Right. And so they were saying, this is kind of like we're mandating that something be done about this. And not like there's going to be a price to pay because they're great citizens of Israel, not like they have a blood price to pay, but more like there will be consequences because we represent a large percentage. Well, I don't know what if those consequences are, people don't show up for work. I don't know. But there was some kind
they're
of
saying
threat
we're not
style.
That
we're serious about this, and this will affect your nation
true.
if you do not help us and engage with us. I don't know what that threat is, but
well, what's really interesting is that Israel didn't just take responsibility in bombing the trucks that were on their way to attack the Druze in Syria. They've now also delivered humanitarian aid. They've delivered food. They've delivered like medicines. They've like fully taking on responsibility for the Druze community in another country. And that I think is like truly remarkable. Israel has never done that before. And what's so beautiful about is that it's actually a part of biblical Israel. We are one step closer for realigning and reattaching the land of Israel back to the people of Israel. And we're seeing it happen before our eyes. It's almost like being thrust upon us. It's being forced upon us. And it didn't happen with the Hamas, but somehow the justice inside us said, what? There's a minority that's being massacred. And Israel acted.
Yeah, and it's really an opportunity. If Israel isn't there yet, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, not ready to really, really like say, this is the land of Israel, that's okay. We were just talking with our good friend on the way up here, Bob Stark, and he's saying, there's the Kurds. there's the Druze. There are real allies of ours that we can empower and say, you're in charge here right now. You're our friends, you're allies. You have the forces of light and goodness in the world. Druze, Kurds, you're in charge
And
here.
you're saying unequivocally that's not Jolani.
Right.
Well, what's just so interesting is that until now, Israel's always acted with like its immediate interests. They've been attacked. We have to attack back. But now we've shifted the dynamics in the region. We've like saying like, hey, all these minorities that are around here, the Kurds, the Alawites, the Druze, the Christians, there's so many groups that are constantly being persecuted by the jihadists. And Israel's saying, I want you to know that if you're allies with Israel, Israel has your back. That's going to shift things in this region.
And if I'm not wrong, 8 months ago, the leaders on the Syrian side of the Druze community started begging the Israeli government to take them in as citizens.
To annex it, not
please
just take them
annex our territory. We
you
want
have,
to be part of the state of Israel.
You have videos coming out right now of these Druze guys grabbing Israeli flags and putting them on top of their houses in Syria.
Well,
so it's crazy. Josh, you were about to get into what's happening in Hebron.
Well, Jeremy, you just mentioned something massive earlier before we jumped on the show. I was like, I did not hear that about Hebron. I would think that this is really breaking news.
Yep. So for years, since 1967, just like the Temple Mount was in the hands of the Jordanian Waqf, so the Tomb of the Patriarchs, the first place that was purchased by the people of Israel, by Abraham, in the land of Israel, our first acquisition in the land in 1967, we gave it over. We gave it over to the Arab municipality of Hebron and to the Waqf as well. And just this week, it's now been reassigned, and its leadership is now the Religious Council of Kiryat Arba in Hebron. So it's like the Jewish people are now reclaiming the responsibility for the Tomb of the Patriarchs. And that is a huge step forward because we are actually starting to become sovereign in our land. The second holiest site in Israel is the Tomb of the Patriarchs. It's the closest to where King David first reigned. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca. It's like our forefathers, our foremothers. And now finally, responsibility and authority over that site has now returned to Jewish hands.
How fitting, though, that it's the first purchased site.
Yeah.
That it's come back. And this, I don't know. I'm trying to think about how do we emphasize the fact that it's a really big deal on this show. Any ideas?
Can I just read something from Israel Hayom?
Well, it's fun. It's interesting to note that there's 3 sites that the Bible says we purchased it, and it's clearly in the Bible itself delineated that we purchased it. Right, Mount Moriah, Shechem, and Hebron.
Yeah,
and we that is our deed. The purchase was made right there.
Abraham, David, and Jacob.
That's right. And what happened? Those are the ones that are the most contested.
Yeah,
that's right.
Because the contest isn't about the land. It's about the Torah. It's about the word of God. It's about the God of Israel. It's a direct contest to the sovereignty of the God of Israel.
And you could even expand that upon where the covenants were made. So we have the deeded places, those 3 deeded places, but then you have the covenant places where the literal God made a covenant to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, to David, right? He made these encounters with them. And those are also incredibly significant places that are connected. I
want to answer your question because you just said something that was brewing in my mind for the last 47 seconds when you said, well, how do we convey what a big deal this is? Yeah. Right. And in my mind, it's so clear that we are on this seam between the kingdom of Saul and the kingdom of David.
Yeah.
That's just very, very clear to me, crystal clear. Just like Saul didn't cut off the head of Agag, Saul was from the tribe of Benjamin. Benjamin Netanyahu, clearly a descendant, whether it's just ideologically or also from the tribe of Benjamin, not a bad leader, with a good heart, just like Saul had, but he wasn't the guy. We're on the seam. Where did King David's kingdom begin? It wasn't in Jerusalem. The first 7 years of his kingdom were in Hebron. And then what starts in Judea ends in Jerusalem. What starts in Hebron ends in Jerusalem. And perhaps now on the parallel that we're in right now is we're declaring sovereignty. Right?
Are we on a 6.5 year countdown to Jerusalem? Was it 6.5 or 7.5 years? King David reigned 7 years. 7 something. Yeah. 7 years.
You guys can have this one, I guess. I mean, we'll give it to you since, you guys are the Judean people, we're the Samaritan people. So according to Israel Hayom, this is the first time that authority over the site has been transferred from the Hebron municipality and the civil administration to a Jewish religious body, which is very significant. So Shai Glick, CEO of the Beit Salmo, not B'Tselem, human rights organization they've long worked on, so right-wing NGO has been working on this. He said, the Cave of the Patriarchs is registered with the Jewish people's title deed already in the book of Genesis. Already talked about that. For many years, due to a tragic decision by Moshe Dayan, the site was under the Waqf and only military control I welcome this important move of transferring the cave to a religious council, just like any other sacred burial site in Israel. You would think that would be like a no-brainer, like a heritage site. He said, after the site was made accessible, it's now time for it to be dignified with a proper roof, air conditioning, restrooms, and more. It's time for sovereignty.
You know what's amazing about this is that if I'm already seeing this happen, now that that's happened, I know for a fact that progress is being made on Joseph's tomb in Shechem to have this kind of thing as well. We're following the biblical trend. It was Hebron. It was Shechem, Shiloh, Samaria, before it was Jerusalem. If this follows that same trend, and we have the Hebron and come back, and then we have the Joseph's tomb opened up where Jews can again come and be and pray like they used to before the Oslo Accords, before they say peace broke out right back then, and then Jerusalem's next. If we follow the biblical story of what happened before, Jerusalem's next, and I will tell you 100% that preparations are being made for that right now that all of us are very well aware of.
Well, I'll tell you, you talk about the scene between Saul and David. And I think that transition really goes to changing the narrative. And the narrative right now is that, well, there was a Holocaust. The Jews needed a place to live, so they came to Israel. And then the world keeps on saying, oh, we're colonizers. We're colonizers from Europe that are coming to a land that doesn't belong to us. And it's like, Israel is the tiniest country in the world. We're the worst colonizers. It's like this little country. We're the colonizers. But when we talk about the tomb of the patriarchs, you talk about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, you talk about Joseph, that changes the entire narrative, saying that this has to do with the Bible. This is something ancient. This is a people in a land. This is something that's deep. It's like it just shatters all of that perspective. That's why actually the tomb of the patriarchs returning to Jewish hands is far more spiritual than political. It's really a statement.
And it also means there's a way that the house of prayer for all nations on top of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, if that can happen in Hebron, so it's just the beginning of what's happening in Hebron. If that shift was to be made and Jewish people were allowed to come like they do in Hebron, that shift has already been made. Jewish people pray every day, 3 times a day in Hebron at the tomb of the patriarchs. If that shift, which is also happening on the Temple Mount, it's just slightly behind what's been happening for many, many years in Hebron. If that happens there, we're witnessing prophecy become reality. It's the words of the prophets coming alive.
Here's a perspective. Here we are, 2025, 80 years ago. Where were the Jews? We were literally in gas chambers in Auschwitz.
Remind people of your grandfather.
Yeah, well, my grandfather, he escaped. He walked.
That's right.
From Russia to Israel right before the Holocaust.
That's what was going on back then.
It's like unbelievable.
Yeah, your story is unreal.
But where we were is like a scattered, destroyed people, hopeless, helpless in the gas chambers, in concentration camps. And where we are today in 80 years, so much had to happen. Reestablishing the state of Israel, fighting the Independence Day War, establishing the army. Like where we've come is so far. Now we're already sovereign now in the tomb of the patriarchs. I mean, we are so close. If we've accomplished that much in 80 years, you can imagine
you're protecting minority groups
to actually build a house of prayer for all nations in Jerusalem, to be a light to the nations, to bring like peace and sovereignty in the land. We are so close.
It's the final step. We're one step, literally one step away.
You know, I just want to we had an incredible project this week, and I don't know if everybody on the show knows that we're actually, all of us around this table are actually farmers. Would you identify as a farmer? Is that
I would identify as an aspiring farmer. When I have real farming questions, I call you.
Yeah, okay. I actually grew up a farmer.
But I do want to say one thing on that. Do I aspire? Maybe I should. Maybe I should really update myself and say, you know what, Ari?
I just don't think people know that about us.
Because we just had a few days ago, and I want some B-roll overlay for this. A few days ago in the farm, 3 years ago, we reached out, and it turned out that there was this Professor Drury of Ariel University that found these seeds from identified from the Davidic times, from the Davidic area of Jerusalem that were preserved in ember, and through science and technology, they were able to revive it. And we just planted those on our land, and they just have yielded their first grapes that are delicious and unbelievable. They were the one on King David's table, and that's literally a revolution, right? We've said it before. What's a revolution? The minute hand has one revolution around the clock, goes back to the beginning. We're right back to reviving that. It's almost a metaphor of the nation of Israel being revived back in our own lands, and that's happening. So yes, I'm a farmer.
Well, for goodness sakes, you have a vineyard, you have chickens, you have sheep. You're holding down how many dunums of land right now? in Judea?
Actually, they just started building a new neighborhood on land that we'd been protecting now for 10 years, and a new neighborhood is now being built there.
You're farmers. Okay. Luke and I grew up as a farmer since I was a kid. I'm a Tennessean farmer. You guys are Judean farmers. Maybe I could say I'm a Judean farmer now because I've served the Judean farmers for 21 years. But I want to, just along as we're talking about these great successes just of this week there, I was just with the Jewish farmer yesterday. Luke and I both were out. Our whole team was out. We were helping to a farm establish a new vineyard. Well, what was incredibly impactful about this place is it's the first time that Jewish people have been on that ground in 2,000 years. We're talking about the Shiloh Valley. A vineyard was going in the Shiloh Valley. This is lands that were laid desolate for 2,000 years, or not just desolate, but actually occupied by foreign forces that were against you and held Jews back and held hostage to their land, right? They could not come into this piece of land. But as the sages of Israel all said, the best times of Israel were right in this valley before. The best times of Israel's history were in this place.
Well, it's where the tabernacle sat for almost 400 years before the temple was built in Jerusalem. And so that's where it was like the focal point of worship and the feasts and the holidays, and every gathering in Israel at that time was right there.
I'm listening to this 80-year-old Jewish man yesterday tell me as he came out to the work site, you could see the sheer joy on his face of like, we're getting back to those days. The best days of Israel are within reach, just like they were 2,000 years ago when the tribes all gathered and partied in this valley. We're coming back. The enemies are fleeing before us. We're building up the land again. And right here on this site, where the best times of Israel before, we're back again. And our team, that was just yesterday, redeeming land back into the Jewish hands that have been desolate for 2,000 years. You can't make this up. We're talking about an absolutely incredible days. And I don't know if everybody out there, and Ari, can you emphasize this in a better way to make them understand how big it is?
Well, I just want to say quickly too, everything y'all just talked about was prophesied too. Like this is a direct fulfillment of biblical prophecy. You were talking Jeremiah saw your vines in Judea 3,000 plus years ago, and he said, there's going to be vines right there. Like all of this stuff, the farms in Samaria, it's all direct fulfillment of prophecy. And we're all living in that time. We're living proof of it.
Jeremiah 31 says, you will yet plant vines on the mountains of Samaria. That's right outside our door. The prophets incessantly said that you're going to come back to the land of Israel. You're back, and 500,000 Jews living specifically in the ancient mountains of Israel section here. Over 7 million have gathered back into the homeland. They said that the ancient ruins are going to be rebuilt. Well, that's happened. Unbelievable. That's happened in every town around you guys. It's happened all over Jerusalem. There's more Jews living in Jerusalem now than any other time in Jewish history, that world history. We're literally witnessing. And I think I just stole every line of Jeremy's.
Well, it's not a coincidence that it's happening also. Much of it, at least what happened yesterday, is happening through you guys. That's not an accident either. I mean, that it's through you. That you said, well, it's going to happen. Let it be through us. Please let us be maybe this is the whole reason we're here at this time. That's who you guys are. But the prophets say that there will be those righteous of the nations that attach themselves to the house of Israel. What does that mean? That when you go to a new place, there's going to be real seething hatred and vicious jihadic genocidal resistance against you. And you're going out there without any weapons, and you're saying, we're here and we're willing to put it on the line for that. And not only that it's you doing it is a different taste. You know, the King David says, Psalm 126, when he returns to Zion, will be like dreamers. And the righteous of the nations will say, look at the great things God has done with you, O nation of Israel. And only then, when it's from the nations of the world, a rabbi says, okay, rabbi. Okay, but when it's the righteous of the nations coming that are not Jews, and they're saying, look at what the God of Israel is doing with you. Then the nation of Israel says, look at the great things the God of Israel is doing with us. And the fact that you guys are there isn't an accident. I'm just so honored to be able to call you my friends because you're the ones that are saying, please let it be through us.
I would love to hear more about, we're in these 3 weeks right now. 3 days ago, there was the fast marking the time of the
Tammuz,
breach of the walls of Jerusalem. For me as a non-Jew, it was a very impactful day because we were building. We weren't tearing down. As the nations responsible, the Jewish people have taken responsibility for it because you said, oh, we were divided as a people. God was dealing with us, and it culminated in losing. And the Jerusalem, they said that the baseless hatred was the reason for all this. But who really did it? Well, it wasn't you. You didn't break down your own walls. the nations did. So I think in a way, the Jewish people, as you guys are unifying, as this whole show's been about unity and bringing about, there's a responsibility also for us as the nations of the world to come and not be the ones that breach the wall of Jerusalem and cause destruction. And 2,000 years of that fast 3 days ago marked something amazing, not only in the building up of Israel, but the nations being a part of building up the land of Israel and not tearing it down. And many people in Israel are beginning not to fast so much on that day. I mean, obviously it's still marked as a fast, but it's getting lesser. It's not because we're seeing the building of Israel. And I just want to say to all those of the nations, be a part of building, not breaching the walls and tearing down. That's the redemption that we're witnessing right now.
Right. I think it's an important distinction that I really want to make, that you said it's not you that did it. It's the nations that did it. It's the nations that broke down the walls. A little tweak to that is the nations didn't do it. God did it. The nations implemented it, and it was because of us as the Jewish people, meaning what you just said is the right way for you to think.
That's right. Yeah.
That's the right way for you to think. The right way for us to think is to own that, take responsibility for it. When we sit on the 9th of Av on the floor and we weep for Jerusalem, we don't talk about Babylonia or the Romans, or we say because of our sins, because we put our faith in flesh and blood and in man before putting our faith in God, because of idolatry and murder and adultery and the sins that we didn't fear God, but we gave into our own impulses and we feared man. And so what is going to really magnetize and attract the nations of the world for their own rectification is us fixing us and putting our faith as the nation of Israel in the God of Israel. That will bring the world to a place of fixing. But we need to first and foremost put our faith in God and align ourselves with his will through the Torah.
Well, if it's to fix us, I feel like we are being fixed. Yeah. That's what it looks like. I mean, we've had this war now for 650 days now. It's almost 2 years of this war. And then we had a war with Iran. It was like a war within a war. Now there's another with Syria. And Israel right now is just spent. Like our hearts are broken every other day. There's another soldier that's being killed. There are terror attacks. And it really feels like we're on the operating table, just like this. And we're going through some open heart surgery. And there's a prophecy in the book of Ezekiel in chapter 36. I'll bring you back from the lands, bring you to your own soil, and you'll have a heart of stone. I'll remove the heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. I'll put a new spirit within you. So the people of Israel that come back to the land, we're going to have a heart of stone. We're not going to be into spirituality. We're not going to be united. We're going to have a heart of flesh that will be restored to us. And so right now we're literally experiencing this painful open heart surgery. But if the goal is to fix ourselves, I actually feel like we are being fixed through this painful process. A new Israel is being born.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. And I think that's something important for people to realize, because, we could go for another 30 minutes and talk about Hamas has now accepted the new, map of IDF withdrawal in Gaza, potential ceasefire. We could talk about the humanitarian aid. We could talk about other countries now taking in people from Gaza. But I think
you got to say something about that. France?
I think
that's just a stroke of God's incredible.
You could say that, yeah.
That's what I said.
You have to say that, because blessing, you'll be blessed. Curse, you'll be cursed is still a real.
Basically,
we could say that France has chosen the curse.
What is being addressed here is that France is coming and saying, Israel, you're committing genocide. And they forgot for a moment that in their own French bylaws, if there is a people that is undergoing a genocide, then they don't need to be approved to immigrate into France. And so they are now having to immigrate all of these genocidal jihadist terrorists into their own borders that are going to be wreaking havoc on the playgrounds of Paris, to their own children. And so it's like really attribute for attribute,
because who they've taken in over the years.
Right. It's already been happening. And I'm sure French people know that. They're like, ooh, okay, maybe it's not a genocide. Okay. But the damage has been done. It's very much attribute for attribute, a turn for a turn.
I think what's amazing about this podcast particularly is that we're able to sit here and not just talk about the horrific war happening with Hamas and talk about what's happening in Syria, but we're actually able to talk about biblical prophecy that was spoken 3,000 plus years ago that happened in your backyard this week, and that happened in Shiloh this week when we put in a new vineyard. And people around the world, if you're watching the news, it changes by the minute. The Trump administration, France, Syria, Gaza, Hamas, everything, it's just happening all the time. And now we're starting to see something that we call like war fatigue, pretty much. Like people are like literally just getting tired of the same thing. What's happening today? Oh, a ceasefire, not a ceasefire. Hamas this, Hamas that. Qatar, you know. But at the end of the day, it's important. Get back to your Bible, get back to your faith, and open your eyes. Like, open your eyes and see the beauty that's happening in the land of Israel. We saw beauty yesterday by putting in a vineyard in Shiloh, where the tabernacle stood 3,500 years ago, and those same vineyards were right there. Somebody in our group was picking up pottery that was there during the times of the tabernacle that were used in the sacrifices and the offering. So I think the encouragement is open your eyes to the beauty of the land of Israel. I think that's y'all's tagline too. We're stealing all of the Land of Israel Network's best quotes today. But open your eyes to the beauty of the land of Israel
and I would
the people
encourage
of Israel.
people, you know, we're not, this is our studio. Like we don't have a multi-million-dollar production budget. We don't have any of that. We're just coming together and we're doing our best. But like you said, let's phrase it differently. What are we doing here? We're not just talking about the what. We're talking about the why. Right? And what do the sages of Israel say? Sibat hasibot. The reason of all reasons of everything is God. Is the God of Israel, the God of the entire world, the God of humanity. And we're bringing it back to that. And I don't know who else is doing it. I don't know a more beautiful way it can be done than through the four of us that are coming from such different places that 1,000 years ago, what were my ancestors, what was their relationship? I don't even want to imagine what their relationship was. And now look at ours on the web here. I was like, if you guys were biological brothers, I couldn't love you anymore. That can only be a God thing.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah,
there's a redemption happening.
Amen. Well, guys, on that note, make sure to connect with us. Make sure to subscribe here and also go over and check out Jeremy and Ari's work at thelandofisrael.com. You can join their weekly fellowship every single week with their wives and everyone else that's a part of their network, thelandofisrael.com. We'll put that link down in the description below. Let us know what you think, guys. Are you opening your eyes to what's happening in Israel? What do you think? Let us know in the comment section below. As always, stop listening to the lies and propaganda and make sure to connect with the truth and the reality of what is happening in the land of Israel. We'll be back very soon here at the Israel Guys.